Buonasera.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. It's so excited to be chatting with you guys tonight, and thanks to Cinquevia for the opportunity. I'll do a very brief introduction, and then I'll start with questions that will be sort of a back and forth exchange, so that we can keep everyone entertained and explore more about what you guys do. So I'm Edoardo. I'm now based at Palazzo Monti, which is a cultural center that I've launched 3 years ago. It includes an artist residency, an exhibition space that creates non-profit exhibitions for artists that are either at the residency or coming with other curatorial projects, and ultimately also the private art collection of contemporary art that is visible to the public. Whereas we're speaking with JamesPlumb, which I'll introduce briefly. James and Hannah are a creative studio based in South London, founded by Hannah Plum and James Russell. They, when I was doing some of the research about them, they define themselves as creators of objects and environments, which is something that I'll inquire about very soon. And just to give a personal input at the beginning of the conversation, what I love about your creations is that there's always this sort of like humor that's omnipresent somehow, and these pieces that really blur the line between art and design, which is another topic that we're gonna cover very soon, which are often inspired or actually even coming from pre-existing design pieces, sort of a mix between a ready-made and an external creative input that goes into the pieces that you guys create. So unless I said something that you want to implement, let's start with the definition of objects and environments, because I love how you very often in your personal statements or interviews and online you make this difference. But how does one affect the other and vice versa, do you think?
It's a great question. I mean, I think the distinction of the kind of choosing to, we've always struggled, I guess, to articulate what we do and what we make and what our output is, because it spans such a range of output, and that sort of felt like a very simple way to, in a way, be quite specific, but also just sort of hugely overarching, because we didn't want to just say we make artworks or sculptures, because that kind of put a sideline to the furniture that we make and the functional objects, and then even with what we broadly describe as our environments, again, there's the whole range. So we didn't, the other terminology never sort of felt kind of never felt right, whereas these kind of broad churches kind of felt like a bigger world to sort of swim in, I think.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting, and I really see this definition in a lot of the projects that you guys have been working on. And I'm going to continue sort of like inquiring about how you approach commissions, which is something that sometimes, more often, I would say, designers are used to approach and deal with. But from what I've seen doing my research, again, you have this super free approach to commissions. It looks like that there's almost no input from the commissioner. There's always this very strong aesthetic that you guys very well maintain. I know it's a tricky topic because some artists don't feel like they are able or want to sort of like compromise their practice. But how do you so well maintain this balance between your independent studio practice and commissions?
I think by listening sometimes. I mean, I probably go off on a huge tangent, so rein me in. But I think people tend to approach us if they have an overall connection in some way. So I don't think a commission might not work. I don't know. Maybe like it.
No, I think we've been very lucky. I think the commissions and the clients that we work with, we've never really had a battle. We've never really had a kind of clash of feeling like we have to compromise. I mean, that said, there's always compromises, and maybe some of the skill is in in hopefully that's not too apparent to people seeing the final projects, because time constraints, budget constraints, they always have an impact. These things are never, as much as we might like it, these things are never infinite. And it's, but I think what Hannah says about a dialogue, we really value just great dialogue with our clients, and it's always a conversation, and
a relationship in a way.
We hope that it's not too didactic and just sort of telling like it's going to be like this, because ultimately it's for them, and it's only going to be a success if they enjoy it and want to inhabit it or want to use it. So if we impose something which because we think it looks great and looks a certain way, but it then is impractical, then it's not a success. So there's always a tussle, I think, for sure. But I think hopefully a success is then when that's not apparent in the final object or environment. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's super interesting what you said about starting to listen, because I guess sometimes people get so into the commission or the project that they don't feel theirs, and they want to already before speaking imposing their own ideas and concepts in their minds. And I think it's totally great what you said about having a conversation about the final piece. And I do also encourage through the residency, in the space where I'm now, I do live with artists throughout the year, artists and designers. We had a lot of designers over the past years, Sabine Marcelis, Guillermo Santoma, Frederick Paulsen. So, I had the chance also to have a dialogue that lasts weeks and months, with designers. And I think that the potential of the commission is the commissioner itself. If the person or the entity or the public space comes not only with a budget, which of course is always a hot topic, but also with a cool concept, I think that's when you both can really grow together. You, of course, in general, I mean, and of course, as far as there's dialogue between the two parties, I think commissions can always be super, super interesting.
And how do you decide, because you must be involved in so many commissions with the Palazzo, how do you decide how much freedom to give, how narrow for your brief to be? I can imagine that's always a challenge for you.
It is, and it isn't. In a way, of course, like when artists and creatives and designers come, there's first of all like a limit, that's time. There's a second limit, that's money, and the third limit is space. What you do, is this thing going to be permanent, temporary? How much space is it going to occupy? So I think that the first week or so, it's about immersion. So you let the person sink in, no matter whether they're coming from Japan, from Ghana, or from Milan. There's always a time to adapt, especially in a palazzo that's like 800 years old and doesn't come with all the. It's a comfortable space. There's heating and electricity and Wi-Fi, but it's totally a different space than a regular studio. So the first time is usually about adapting, but I think the cool thing is that we don't ever impose a commission. It's always a conversation. It's always something that can develop over time. So it goes back to what you said before. I think that sometimes I guess there's maybe two kinds of commissions. There's a need and a desire. So the need is like, okay, I need this chair, I need this sofa, or I need a painting on the wall. I'm gonna call this person XYZ and get a work. This is more a desire of leaving you to digest the information, absorb the light of the sky that you see in the morning and at night, sleep on the frescoes that decorate the ceilings, get to know the city, get to know yourself in this new space, and then coming up with something that is needed for the space. So I think for sure, out of space and money and time, I think that for commissions, time is the most important element in the equation. And before, we were mentioning permanent and temporary, which is, I'm going to continue this topic actually, because I've seen that you guys both do permanent sort of installations and objects, which kind of usually belongs to a more traditional artist practice, unless you speak about perhaps, I don't know, sound or performance. But you also do temporary projects, which I think is so interesting, because then you have a time limit and you give yourself and whatever you make a time limit. How do you approach this? What do you prefer between the two, if you do have a preference?
I think a mixture is quite nice. Sometimes it's quite, I mean, I know there's never enough time and we're all craving time, but sometimes it's quite nice to have a tight deadline, because then I think there can sometimes be too much time on the other hand to think and kind of worry. Whereas I think to really be in the moment, I think sometimes timelines especially help me focus because there's a rather than kind of getting kind of lost and questioning.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Maybe.
Totally. Yeah. I think like,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we just to, you know, bring us as an example, of course, the residencies are, of course, they have a time limit, especially when artists come from abroad. So I guess, as you said, having a certain amount of time does help and does give you that boost of creativity. And is there, do you have a preference between coming up with a concept for a temporary or permanent project? And does this time limit, if it exists, influence your decisions?
I don't think we have a preference for temporary or permanent. It can be very, very, obviously very, very different experiences.
I think if things are temporary, then I guess in terms of, we like them to be kind of as live and as not as less wasteful. That doesn't make sense, does it? To be as. But
I think a lot of temporary events, for example, can seem quite wasteful because things get produced for a very short lifespan, sometimes just an evening or maybe just a week or whatever it is, and then it has no life at the end. And it's always been in us to make things as real and solid as possible, even if it's temporary. So, you know, going back to maybe when we did a temporary hotel, it was just for 1 week back in 2010. And there's lots of things we could have done in kind of very, very temporary ways. But I'm trying to think of good examples. But, you know, we properly made the curtains for the room, and we
and then reused
decorated the room, you know, impeccably, and everything was real. Nothing was kind of skimped on, and I think that translated to the experience. You know, it felt kind of more meaningful in that.
Yeah, and I think maybe as well with time and budget, it's like, don't be honest with those things rather than try and pretend to make something look like something else. I'm waffling. I might have gone off
it can be tempting to it can be tempting because of constraints to try and make something look like something else, and our preference would tend to be, you know, we'll actually use something real, and if that means using a cheaper material because you can make it real rather than a sort of fake effect, something sort of skin deep. So I think we are sort of going on sort of tangents, but I think,
rein us in. Feel free to cut.
I'm gonna ask you a question that I usually would imagine would be the best to end a conversation. Of course, we're not ending it now, but just because you know, it's such an interesting conversation that I want to keep on teasing you guys. What is the most interesting project that you have not realized yet? What's your best unrealized project, and why? If there is one. I mean, if you're, I don't know, lucky or unlucky to have one.
I mean, the thing that comes to my mind, and might be different from Hannah's, is a future incarnation of our most recent exhibition. So in February, we exhibited Stained Moons, which has been a project we've been working on for about 5 years. And the February incarnation was an exhibition called Silent Light in Northern Ireland, in a beautiful temple on the edge of a cliff, right on the north coast. And that was, you know, kind of interesting in terms of temporary and permanence. It was only a 2-week-long exhibition, but the feeling was one of real connection and permanence to the landscape and to the skyscape and so on. But to answer your question, we were lucky enough three or four years ago on a trip to Lebanon to visit Tripoli, and Oscar Niemeyer's unfinished Fairground, a kind of masterpiece of brutalist architecture, and within that there's an amazing unfinished.
It was the amphitheatre, the concert hall amphitheatre.
Yeah, and this space is just absolutely mind blowing, and we would love to take the Stained Moons installation to Tripoli. if we can make it happen logistically, and it's that would be.
You stole my answer.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's fine.
Well, yeah, it's okay as a duo to have one joint unrealized project. That's
that would be.
Hopefully, it's gonna come to life anytime.
Yeah, and also I think to work. I don't know. I've always thought like in opera or theatre, something that's I guess in live, that's really live and a performative element as well.
And sound. I think we came close to working with the sort of live sound instrumental element actually with the February exhibition, and we actually then turned it on its head and it became a silent exhibition. So the whole walk across the cliff top and the sort of 40-minute installation itself was observed in complete silence. But before that, we were having a lot of conversations and speaking to people about commissioning and working with musicians. So that's something, not a very, very clear vision for the future, but I think that's something we really want to do as well. That's super interesting. I look forward to seeing it realized very, very soon. I'm gonna now speak about a quite abused topic, which is sustainability. I say abuse because I feel like people are not using it correctly. As important it is, as it should be for everyone at every stage of the industries. From fashion to design to travel and so on. So of course it is important to have a sustainable approach, or at least hope for a macro sustainable approach in the circular economy. But how important it is for you guys to have a micro circular economy approach? And by this sort of like big words, I just mean you reuse a lot of the materials. I see behind you that you have a lot of broken pieces of glass, I believe. A lot of found objects become pieces that you then show along with additions. Perhaps it's not your main focus to be in that way sustainable, but is that somehow important and relevant for the practice?
I think you go.
No, it's a really, really interesting question because, as you say, with a lot of the starting point of a lot of our work comes from found materials. Certainly in the past, it was also very often antiques and usually fragments of antiques, and so it is a kind of core part of the studio. That said, it was never consciously a sort of
save the planet,
sustainable kind of agenda or kind of ethos. So it's a kind of funny one that to say that it's not part of our ethos is obviously incorrect, because it is a kind of core part, but it's not about a sort of beating that drum in a way. I think it just sort of it's in us innately to look at these things, and we're always captivated more by and I think just being frugal with materials as much as possible is sort of innately in us, and perhaps given the state and the importance of it as an issue, maybe we should be bolder and maybe we should declare it more, rather than probably we're a little shy to talk about it because we sort of feel like it's not we haven't made this piece of work to make a green statement.
Right.
But at the same time, we have made decisions all along the way to be as green as we can. So I don't know if we're kind of dodging a question or answering your question. I don't know.
No, I'm
yeah, I think it's totally fair. I mean, you don't want to be the green designers, but in a way that by just being yourself, you're making a statement that's stronger than introducing yourself as such.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I think there's always that argument, isn't there, that just exhibiting those values and making those choices and not kind of bragging about it or not kind of overinflating it. If everyone lived like that, then we wouldn't need to talk about it so much. But I also take the point that a lot of people do need told and woken up. So it's a very, very interesting question.
Yeah, and when I was asking this question and then hearing your answers, something else came to mind that's totally different from your practice, but somehow there's points of connection, and is that ancient Japanese practice of kintsugi, where basically you join broken pieces of ceramic and glass by using, I mean, supposedly gold or metal. Gold, now it's glue with glitter, which is probably less sustainable. But I think it's the same point. Like,
Yes.
you do reuse something that's broken, that maybe you discard, but you're not like selling it, I don't know, like you're not PETA or you're not WWF. Like you are acting as such. You're sharing this statement, which is super powerful, but also you're not abusing the term, and you're not capitalizing. You're not monetizing. Sorry, that term, which I think is the most elegant way to do it. And we were talking about some pieces of glass in your studio. Is there something you want to share about it? Is it an ongoing project, or is it?
So this was kind of it's kind of ongoing, but this was the kind of work area when we were developing the stained moons. So I mean, I guess coming from the question we've just been talking about,
this is just
do you want to explain what it?
Oh wow! Is it just cut glass or broken glass, or?
Some bits are broken, some bits are intact, but they're all from an old glass house. But what we really loved is I'm going to try and hold it up. Can you see
the earth texture and
and kind of the lichen? I'm not 100% sure what you can see. So it is kind of a mixture between kind of dirt and lichen and algae.
So it's about 5 years ago, and we were at a place we go quite regularly, which was a sort of church reclamation antiques seller where we go quite often, and we'd never walked around this particular corner, and we were just taking our dog for a walk, and around this corner these huge, vast greenhouses, but completely overgrown with trees growing out of them and so on. And it was the lichen on the glass which just captivated us, and we knew we wanted to do something with the glass, and we managed to.
Well, we saw it as something quite precious in a way.
Yeah. And we were able to get in touch with the farmer that owned the land, and initially we thought there's no way he's going to let us near this place to take it, but with a bit of sort of persuasion eventually he said go for it. So for us, we were able to kind of harvest as much as we could safely. It was a very kind of dangerous structure to be finding in and amongst, and for a long time we weren't ever sure exactly what we were going to make, and through a process of, I guess, sort of trial and error, and also it was the silhouettes and the light projecting through that was fascinating. And this is just an example. I'm not sure what you can see.
Something up behind?
Oh yeah, it looks like a half moon.
Exactly. So we learned that by removing some of the.
Does that help see it a bit better?
Yeah, fantastic. Maybe the other way. Yeah. Oh wow.
So that's where we sort of then began the stained moons. We learned that, and then we learned that also by layering them over each other, we could create different phases, and then and we made our own projectors, which then project these images, and that was part of the installation. So yeah, it's a really interesting example of a effectively completely worthless material. This place was just going to get. In fact, it was then at one point we had a race against time because the farmer was retiring and he sold the land to developers, and they were just kind of absolutely devastated, smashed the whole place down. Luckily we got in and was able to get some of the glass before that happened.
That's amazing. I guess like sometimes the best projects come out of ideas that you would never imagine can interlock and actually happen as a domino effect. But I'm super glad that you managed to get a hold of these pieces. And to continue on the studio wave, it does look like from what's around you that you do actually make pieces yourself. And it sounds maybe like a silly question to many people around, but my experience taught me that there are designers that sometimes they either can't or don't want to, which are very different reasons, make pieces themselves. So question number one, which I can answer, you make your pieces, right? And question number two, do you enjoy that? Or would you rather, or are you working with maybe artisans or factories that can enlarge your production? And
there are two people here that help us make our work. They've disappeared. There's Will and Tom.
Hey guys.
We're not alone. We're not alone.
So are there four of you making the works, or
we Yeah, we expanded contract according to projects. Project we did for Hermes in 2016, 2017. At one point, there was over 20 people in the studio. It was a very short deadline, talking about deadlines and a lot to make. And I guess the last couple of years, we've been kind of averaging 6 to 8 people, and more recently, very, very small because of the pandemic. So, there've been fewer people around. But we do, we do make ourselves. We like to make as much as possible in the studio,
and control things as well. Like to really, I think to completely hand something over sometimes can create a separation.
And even when we do work with other fabricators, maybe in the past, particularly some metalwork, maybe we do some metalwork here ourselves, but when it's on a larger scale, we have then a very close relationship of going and seeing them and really, probably sometimes to their frustration, being very, very detail focused, because drawings only go so far, and I think you need to be there, seeing the shape of things, seeing the patina, seeing it might be what we thought we would polish back, we realize we should leave, and those things happen as you go. We very rarely, if ever, have a finished drawing that we just send. Even here, it's always annotations of to be developed in the process. So yeah, we love being hands-on and making ourselves, and sometimes get a little bit too sucked into the office and onto the computers. It's always a pleasure being out in the workshop.
Yeah, I guess you can see from the results of your practice that I would just go crazy thinking of how to explain to do something that you guys make to someone else rather than just making it yourself, just because I guess it's so detailed and so different, and you use so many materials that, again, it would be much easier to imagine that you actually hands-on make the works yourself in the studio. And, I don't want to in any way talk about the C word, Corona or anything, but I was just in Venice a couple of weeks ago because I wanted to go see what they are calling the Biennale of the Biennales. So as you know, Architecture Biennale was supposed to be this year, was moved to next year, and so on. So not to leave people without anything to check out at the Giardini, they made this super beautiful project that was designed by Forma Fantasma.
Yes, we read about it.
And it's about basically the historical biennales, the one during fascism, the one during the Nazi invasion, the one during the 80s and 68, and so on and so on. And why I'm saying this, because I found it super fair that they moved this year's architecture onto next year, because the world that we live in now has changed. The personal space has changed, public, private has really maybe hasn't changed yet, but it definitely will change. I'm thinking of perhaps maybe more the public space will change. Airports, stations, restaurants, bars, streets. Or do you think that it will affect your practice, this change of basically everything that we thought was normal? Because we realize that there's never going to be a normal as we thought it was before. I personally hope that we won't go back to that. So there's no normal. It's just what we perceive as, present. But do you think that whatever is happening, either super specifically to you as James, as Hannah, or to what you think is the world for you, will that affect your practice? Has it already? Or you will just continue working project by project without thinking of whatever happens around?
Gosh, yeah, it's a really big question.
I think it definitely will affect us. It can't not. It is already. Even in just super specific working as when our team do come to help us, we have to behave differently in a very specific way. It hasn't directly affected any projects yet. We've not had any sort of changes of brief or any requests to sort of factor that in. But that's also probably because we're mainly working on our own projects at the minute. We have some commissions, but they had started in a way before. So, but I kind of have no doubt that our most recent environment was was for PS Lab, a lighting company who, actually that was the reason we were in Lebanon, was visiting PS Lab. They're based out of Lebanon, and they opened some offices in London recently, and we helped them with that work. And if that project was starting now, I'm sure there would be different things we'd have to factor in.
It's such a shared space. Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, the design we delivered was actually very open and a lot of space and kind of multitasking. So perhaps it would still and will still be viable, but I'm sure it would way much higher on.
Or if we were asked, not that we have designed to design a restaurant now, where would you begin? Where?
Right.
What does I don't know.
I mean, I think. As you say, there are some things that we hope might stick from the effects of how it's maybe slowed some people down. Obviously, in no way to kind of belittle the effects and the health impact on people, but I think hopefully there could be some things that. Yeah, so maybe a slowing down, literally a sort of stopping and looking. Less people in exhibitions could be a beautiful thing, as difficult as that is for institutions to figure out. How can they be sustainable and with ticket sales and so on. But some of my personally most poignant and powerful moments in museums have been when there's been virtually no one else there. I guess it's kind of obvious, right? You're one-on-one with these artworks. But that's a huge challenge for museums and galleries to figure out. So, sorry, kind of going off on tangents.
No, yeah, I think it's totally interesting what you said. I guess we can only wait and see or continue doing what we do. I guess nothing really ever stopped. I mean, as far as the world keeps on living, whether we are locked down or not locked down, it's impossible to, I guess, say, okay, this way of working stopped today and now we're working in a different way. We also realize that there's so many changes that are super local now, like the way that the UK reacts to something is different from Italy and France and Germany. And in a world that has been globalized since, I don't know, Marco Polo went to China or the States were found by the West, it's really, really hard when something like this happens to predict what's going to be next. So I guess the best is just to focus on the present and continue working on the projects as they come. And of course, we have to hope that institutions have funds to continue doing these projects, and young artists and designers don't get their projects cut because of this crisis. Before we mentioned Forma Fantasma, which I have not personally met, but I really love the work, who are also a design duo. I had the pleasure of hosting a couple of years ago Soft Baroque, which are also a design duo based in London, made of Nick, who's from Australia, and Sasha, who's from Slovenia, and now I'm talking to you guys, and I feel like that. The sort of duo topic is more often approached with designers or with let's say fine designers, as a mix of fine artists and designers, as you guys. How's the production process both mentally and physically is affected by you? Is there someone is there a thinker? Is there a maker? Are you a bit of both? Is there someone that researches, somebody that glues things together? Because I'm just asking because I know that sometimes in other design duos, people are super okay to say that I'm the thinker and I can't even glue a piece of paper together, and the other one is the maker. Of course, there's always this exchange, always an ongoing process. I'm just curious about it.
Well, I think it's happened very slowly over quite a long period of time, because we both went to the same art school. When did we? 2000. I'm terrible. 2003. Is that 17 years ago? Yeah. 17 years ago we graduated. So we've kind of been hanging out for over 20 years. And even when we were at art school, we both had our own individual practices.
Yeah.
But would always kind of help each other out on different bits and pieces. So I guess it's slowly been coming together, and then maybe 10 or so years ago, JamesPlumb was born, who is neither one of us, but kind of both of us. So there's no ego in that sense. We all do a bit of everything.
Yeah, I think it really goes back and forward a lot. I mean, there are definitely some traits in both of us which are quite distinct. You know, Hannah is definitely tends to be the person that gets things going, much more impulsive, and is kind of racing up to things, saying that's incredible, that broken chair, and just has the energy. I'm the procrastinator, kind of.
But then that can be really helpful sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes we surprise each other and catch each other out. Suddenly I'll be like, we've got to, crack on with this, and Hannah's slowly saying, well, that's, so we sort of sometimes reverse roles. And then in the making, it's really both. I mean, I guess there's probably a few things.
I'm not very good on computers, hands up. Literally, and my concentration, I have to apologize, because I'm not very good on talking on the computer. I'm literally like a child, so I apologize. That's why I keep looking at Jake. When you want to be with
the person. The
person. Maybe I need to sit really close.
I'll send a life-size.
Please send. We should have
so you can next
We
time.
should have organized that. Sorry, I do apologize, because my eyes are a little bit not very good with technology.
But I totally respect the way that you guys managed to collaborate in such a successful way. I'm just myself. I don't know. It's like there's maybe very few things that I think I could be able to do with another person, and something so interesting, something so creative, I think is super challenging. So I really respect how you guys managed to not fight and 10 years after this baby's born, still be keeping JamesPlumb alive. I'm wondering, do you guys have practical advice that you would like to share to any designers, artists, or creatives in general?
Practical advice.
To persevere.
Perseverance.
Yeah, perseverance, and I
think that's quite a statement. I love that it's just one word, and I totally embrace that suggestion. It's not that given for granted that people don't give up after a few tries. And did you guys have to fight against something or someone to reach, or yourself perhaps, to reach your status?
It can be
hard.
It can be really hard. It's not the easy route. In some respects, it's not. It's not constant. It can ebb and it can create. I don't know whether I'm. Forgive me if I'm going off on another tangent, but it's atypical. Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's not necessarily stable. It's not necessarily regular. I guess certainly our approach at times was maybe at times where we could have. We tend to veer more towards.
We're not very commercial, so that makes.
We tend to veer more towards unique objects. So huge amount of time and effort going into one piece, when obviously arguably a smart thing to do is to take all those decisions you made and refine this design down, and then to say, well, let's make 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000. But that's never really been our instinct. And when we've flirted with it, we've often then tended to be quite uncomfortable. We really love. Not always. There are some of our pieces that are additions and so on, but and so maybe that's the sort of the perseverance as well. Like if you have that sense, is sort of try and stick to it. It might not be as financially rewarding, but certainly. Perseverance, I think, is kind of
maybe that. I hope that's not too pessimistic.
No,
but I mean it in a just.
I think it's a quality that to have to be determined to carry on your practice, hopefully, it does have some uniqueness and some quality to it. I believe that. Sorry, Hannah, go ahead.
No, I'm so sorry. No, I was going to say, I think persevering to communicate and talk to our peers as well. I think everyone can go quite insular sometimes, and I think it's really important to talk and discuss, which is quite difficult at the moment, but to really share.
Yeah, and I think that's totally in line with what I'm about to say, which is briefly mentioning social media and the digital world, which is kind of a paradox because it's providing so much potential, but also
so much disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, an illusion. People are delusional because numbers are just like coming out of the blue without any real life reason to exist, and the practice can be supported online by comments and shares and views and likes, but then it's difficult to translate it into an offline world, which I think it's, if anything, more than ever what we're going towards. The importance of being able to have an offline presence more than online.
It's huge. I think it was a couple of years ago. This just made me laugh so much about social media, which we're not terribly brilliant at. But we'd been to see Michael Nyman, a concert of his I think it was at the Barbican or the Royal Festival Hall. And afterwards, I think I was just getting into Instagram. It's like, I wonder if he's on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I went, and it was like, he has 2,900 followers. This is one of the most incredible. This is crazy. Even we, little JamesPlumb, had more. I was like, this is so insane. He's amazing, but it's a generational thing, and I get. But it's like, this is, yeah. Sorry, don't get me on social.
I think it's super cool.
But it is great and can be amazing and to share in one respect. But I think it can be toxic in another, and I think we have to ground ourselves in the real. Yeah. And I think if you can do both, then everyone's winning. But I think if you go too far in one insular
which is challenging right now because
exactly.
Because experiencing the real is limited. So there is a drive to digitize art fairs, to and this whole kind of scenario. So that is a challenge for us all.
Yeah. Totally. And I think that before I wrap up with a question for you, which is actually a question for me, and a final little statement and invite. I wanted to read a question that we got just now from Anna, who's listening. Nice talk to all of us. What do you think will be the role of art design in shaping this new normal we have to face? I'll just say my own comment, my own topic, comment real quick, and I'll be not pessimistic. I think just realistic. Art won't save the world. I mean, we're not like this magic potion.
We're not saving lives.
Yeah, I mean, neither design, I think, nor architecture, nor even economy. I mean, that's the point. Just to be straight up, and I try to at least live off art, whatever that means. So, just to be straight, I'm not gonna be like the one that says, "Oh my God, like art will save the world." No, it won't, because at the end of the world, me, yourself, if you're a president or anything else that you do in the world, you need to have bread and water on your table, and that means that you have to work and in the physical world. But I think that it's gonna be just tough, challenging. People will have. Museums will have budgets slashed, and people will think not twice, 20 times before buying a piece, commissioning work, and so on, so on. But I think the solution to the equation, which, as we were saying before, comes with a problem that's given by social media and online world, is simple. I think, again, it's not a magic word or a spell. It's as old as it could be, and it's quality over quantity. I think that's the only way. If you whatever you do at any stage of whichever industry you work in, and in the specific world, art and design, quality over quantity is the key topic. I think, to not survive, but at least go on and have a statement. That's my say on Anna's question. What do you guys think?
How do we agree? Yeah, no, that is really difficult to follow.
I mean, I think you're right. I think, it's difficult to sort of, for us all to sit here and say that it's going to be this absolutely transformative, world-changing medium. My gut instinct would be to say less about how art and design might change, but more, maybe just how it continues to do what it's always done. To challenge the norm, to break kind of standard ways of operating, and
to
for us, the word inspire, and for us, all of our work is about experiencing. It's we always have in mind what the person entering our environment will experience, or interacting with our objects, and how they will feel. What are they seeing? What are they touching? What are they smelling? And I think artists, architects, designers, musicians' jobs, partly, there's a huge range, but it's to excite the world in that way and about those things, and to continue to do that, because those moments, and I think that's what I mean as well, talking earlier about part of the slowing down that everyone, or huge numbers of people, experienced. And if artists can continue to tap into that and help everyone to look again, to see again, and to experience with kind of fresh eyes and fresh sensibility, continue to do that as it always has done.
Yeah, that's a fantastic input and feedback from you guys. I'm gonna wrap it up quickly. So now it's your turn. Do you have a question for me that you'd like to answer me, or ask me, or?
Well, I mean, as you were asking us the questions, I wanted to ask almost each one back to you. In terms of with the sustainability, how you weave that into Palazzo Monti. That was one that came to mind, and then the conversation moved forward. And the challenge for you of with the pandemic and with Palazzo Monti, how you're managing that with your program, or because it seems like you have a huge international roster of artists and designers. How that's have you been able to make changes, or is that still unfurling? I think just we'd love to hear more about things like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to use the verb, the past sentence to describe the international roster, because we do have international artists at the moment. We actually never shut down during the pandemic, because we had artists from Japan, States, Germany, and France at the residency. And one of our core values is to provide a safe space to whoever comes to the Palazzo. So rather than kicking them out back to their countries, we stayed open with all the sanitary requirements. Amazing. But through the lockdown, we always had artists in residence. We were able to welcome only Italian artists for just 3 months, but then as of September 1st, we got back into having a French and a Belgian and an Italian-American artist. So there was a huge celebration for us to go back to having this international mindset. But James, you were mentioning this sort of sustainability. Again, I don't want to use this word too much, because to be completely honest, it's not something that I founded a project thinking too much of. But then thinking it backwards, there's 2 examples that I can carry. One is the palazzo itself. So the space was not built, it wasn't rented, and it was not somehow renovated or restored. So there was no extra effort or extra land taken, extra CO2 being produced to launch the project. It was very, very minimal. And maybe that's not a very sort of easy to calculate sustainable approach, but more of a problem that Italy has, of having so much space, beautiful and inspiring, without projects within it. So you see a lot of like palazzos and buildings that are historic and are not usually used properly. So I hope that this project inspires other people to either do for-profit or non-for-profit, as we are a project, and without building and using more cement, which is really, really bad for the environment. And then on a more microscopic scale, we do have a couple of rooms where we store and gather materials that have not been used by past artists, which are then reused. So it's something that we don't oblige, we just simply encourage. But a lot of frames for paintings can be made with pieces of wood that maybe a sculptor doesn't use anymore, or simply having access to materials allows perhaps a painter, a photographer, or a poet to explore sculpture and then reuse the works without ever having the chance to think about it. So by providing a physical space where products are not thrown away, no matter how much is left of them, is a very strong input that we provide for creatives to have this like circular economy, in a way. I'm gonna wrap up this super interesting conversation that I hope to continue in person whenever I can come to London.
Yeah, and we'd love
by inviting you guys. So now it's time to set up a date for you to visit whenever you want, and perhaps even spend some weeks here and
incredible.
But you're more than welcome to come visit Palazzo. We're right between Venice and Milan, super easy to reach by the high-speed train that connects the city. So if you're ever in North Italy, just give us a ring, and we'll be more than happy to welcome you here.
Thank you. And the same
when you're in London, let us know.
Yes.
Come have dinner at the studio here.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks again for everyone who's been watching us, and to Cinque Vie for the opportunity. Hannah, James, it was nice to meet you, and big kiss to the rest of the studio and the dog. I've got my dog. So,
Wilfred, he has been sitting here. Wilfred, what's he doing now? I think there's a fox outside. Hang on. Can you see it? Wilfred, look.
Oh yeah.
We're live. He's not coming.
There you go.
I know, he's
Doesn't
good
look that excited.
No.
They're sleeping, but thanks again, guys. It was
Thank
great
you very much.
meeting you, and
Thank you,
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.